Now, they want to take a former United States prosecutor, the representative of the people of the Virgin Islands, and without even going to the ethics committee, much less a court, they want to arraign her on some charges based on a newspaper article that she did something lawful. However ill-advised it may have been, she took a phone call from one of her constituents. I don't think it is the position of the very distinguished gentleman that if we find Jeffrey Epstein on the phone with Donald Trump, he should be impeached for it, or is that his position? That they've arraigned a Democratic member for taking a phone call from her constituent, Jeffrey Epstein, in the middle of a hearing. And of course, I don't think there's any rule here against taking phone calls in a hearing.
The House defeated a Republican attempt to censure Delegate Stacey Plaskett, Democrat of the Virgin Islands, and remove her from the Intelligence Committee for exchanging text messages with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein during a congressional hearing. The failed attempt to punish Plaskett came hours after both chambers of Congress had moved quickly, and with almost no dissent, to push through legislation directing the Justice Department to release the Epstein files, a measure that Republicans had initially fought to kill, and as President Trump and GOP lawmakers were toiling to shift the focus to Democrats' interactions with the disgraced financier. The 214 to 209 vote to reject the censure was mostly along party lines. The newly released documents from Jeffrey Epstein's estate show that the convicted sex offender texted with a Democratic member of Congress, Stacey Plaskett of the U.S. Virgin Islands, during a congressional hearing with Michael Cohen, and that those text messages may have influenced the Congresswoman's questions of Cohen, President Donald Trump's former personal attorney and fixer. In the texts, Epstein appeared to be watching the February 2019 hearing in real time, and at one point informed Plaskett, whose name is redacted from the documents, that Cohen had brought up former Trump executive assistant Rona Graff in his testimony. At the time, Cohen was testifying before the House Oversight Committee against his former boss, alleging that Trump was racist, manipulated financial records, and directed hush money payments to cover up his extramarital affairs, allegations Trump denied. Cohen brought up Rona, keeper of the secrets, Epstein texted, misspelling Graff's first name. Rona? Plaskett responded. Quick, I'm up next, is that an acronym? She added, suggesting she would question Cohen soon. That's his assistant, Epstein replied. Stacey Plaskett defended herself before the U.S. House of Representatives.
From Virgin Islands, Representative Plaskett.
Thank you so much to Mr. Raskin, to my former professor in law school, and I want to address the body. I first want to give you all a sense of what was happening that day. Everyone knows at that hearing in February, the entire country was watching. As Michael Cohen decided he was going to finally give up information about what was happening in the Trump world, the Trump enterprise. And at the beginning of that hearing, the ranking member, Jim Jordan, had the disrespect to Elijah Cummings, may he rest in peace and his name be a memory, after not allowing Mr. Jordan to shut the committee hearing down. And I turned to Mr. Jordan and told him to have respect for the chair and to basically shut up. And that moment went viral. And I began to get innumerable texts from friends, from foes, from constituents about what was happening in that hearing. And I got a text from Jeffrey Epstein, who at the time was my constituent, who was not public knowledge at that time that he was under federal investigation, and who was sharing information with me. Now, I heard recently from someone that I was seeking advice from him. Let me tell you something. I don't need to get advice on how to question anybody from any individual. I have been a lawyer for 30 years. I have been a narcotics prosecutor in New York City. I have had the honor of being a political appointee at the Justice Department after September 11th as a Republican appointee in the Bush administration. I know how to question individuals. I know how to seek information. I have sought information from confidential informants, from murderers, from other individuals, because I want the truth, not because I need them to tell me what to say. And if you look at the transcript, you will see that I questioned Michael Cohen for 5 minutes. The Washington Post only shows you 30 seconds and takes from it one individual's name that I got from Jeffrey Epstein and didn't know who the individual was, and put that individual with a host of other individuals that I felt the committee should subpoena. They've never been subpoenaed. They've never been questioned. Because at the end of the day, I know that in the Trump administration and with my colleagues over there, it's not about sexual assault. It's not about support of victims. It's about money. It is about money. I have consistently stood against sexual violence and the exploitation of women and children in previous careers as well as here in this body. We all know that Jeffrey Epstein's actions were absolutely reprehensible. As a constituent, as an individual who gave donations to me, when I learned of the extent of his actions after his investigation, I gave that money to women's organizations in my community. Not back to him, but to women in the community who needed that support. That's what I think should have been done, and that's what I did. They've taken a text exchange which shows no participation, no assistance, no involvement in any illegal activity, and weaponized it for political theater, because that's what this is. This has been reviewed by federal courts. Any charges, victims who initially had a case against me dismissed it on their own without prejudice. You don't want to talk about what is really happening here. Your attacks on working families, your protection of powerful predators and corporate criminals. You want to talk about texting felons? How often do you text President Donald J. Trump? That's the individual we should be concerned about. And let me tell you this. I am not going to support the wealthy and connected who continue to exploit workers and evade taxes, powerful figures with credible allegations who face no consequences, and corporate interests profiting from human suffering while families struggle. And let me tell the people of the Virgin Islands.
Gentleman will state his point of order.
The point of order is you may not call the President of the United States a felon. That is a violation.
Point of order is under consideration, and we're not going to lose order here either, so please.
May I continue? May I continue, Mr.
Members
Speaker?
are, however, reminded to refrain, as mentioned a little while ago, from making personality commentary towards the President. The point of order is not timely, so the gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What is happening here? I feel sorry for my colleagues. I feel sorry for this body. I see members coming and speaking against me who I've never even had a conversation with. You don't know me. You don't know the work that I've done. You don't know the support that I've given to families, to individuals, to support people. I worked a full-time job with children under the age of 5, going to school, law school at night. Do you think I would risk my law degree for any individual? Never mind a reprehensible individual by Jeffrey Epstein, I would not. But what I'm about is the truth. And let me tell the people of the Virgin Islands, this attempt at intimidation will pass. We in the Virgin Islands do not back down from a fight. That is how we won our freedom, and that is how we will continue to grow our equality. And if you censure me, take away a committee, I will still do the work. because I am here to support people and to support this great Constitution, which I have sworn numerous times to uphold.
Democrat Maryland Representative Jamie Raskin downplayed his colleague's decision to communicate with disgraced sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
The gentleman's recognized.
And I rise in opposition to this resolution. We're here today on the floor to support the complete disclosure of information related to Jeffrey Epstein and his billion-dollar international child sex trafficking ring. And our side of the aisle, at least, supports the release of information relating to anybody who had anything to do with it, whether they're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, or what have you, period. We insist on complete, full disclosure. This resolution has nothing to do with that. This seems to me to be one more pathetic effort to distract and divert attention from the fact that the president's name appeared more than 1,000 times already in the small fraction of material released on Epstein, and from the failure of the majority to move to disclose this information. And it is this bipartisan group that we've had behind the discharge resolution, which has insisted on bringing this to the fore, and we've got nothing but obstruction, opposition, resistance, evasion, distraction, and diversion from the other side. And now we get one more resolution like this. The resolution actually proposes a disciplinary censure against Representative Stacey Plaskett, but amazingly alleges no misconduct. It does not allege the violation of the Constitution. It does not allege the violation of a federal law or a state law or local law. It does not even allege a violation of the ethics rules of the House of Representatives, and yet they want to censure her and throw her off of her committee. This, a distinguished former federal prosecutor, diligent public servant, representative of the people of the Virgin Islands. Now, criminal justice has two parts to it. One is insisting upon legal accountability for people who do wrong. The other part of it is due process, which may be the two most beautiful words in the English language, certainly the two most beautiful words in the Constitution of the United States. It's due process that protects all of our freedoms and our rights against the arbitrary power of government and the will just to punish somebody without any process at all. But that's exactly what's going on here. Think about it. Ghislaine Maxwell had due process. She had a right to counsel. She had a right to hearing. She had a right to hear the evidence against her. She had a right to put on her case. She had a right to cross-examine. She had a right to a neutral, impartial tribunal. She had a right to unanimous verdict of a jury. And all of that she had, and she was found guilty. And that's why she was sentenced to jail for 20 years, even though Donald Trump has transferred her from a real prison to a prison camp where she's gotten very special pampered treatment, like she's in a Trump hotel. She gets room service to her cell. She gets gym privileges other inmates don't get. She gets to use the warden as a go-between with people outside of the institution and so on. But in any event, she had due process. Donald Trump had due process. He was convicted on 34 felonies, but he had the right to counsel. He had the presumption of innocence. He had a unanimous jury trial right. They had a right to cross-examine everybody, put their own witnesses on. Now, they want to take a former United States prosecutor, the representative of the people of the Virgin Islands, and without even going to the ethics committee, much less a court, they want to arraign her on some charges based on a newspaper article that she did something lawful. However ill-advised it may have been, she took a phone call from one of her constituents. Now, I don't think it is the position of the very distinguished gentleman that if we find Jeffrey Epstein on the phone with Donald Trump, he should be impeached for it, or is that his position? Is his position that any time Jeffrey Epstein got somebody on the phone, and he got a lot of people on the phone, that person is suddenly guilty? That sounds like guilt by association. That sounds like collective guilt. Our minority whip introduced a perfectly reasonable amendment to say, let's refer this to an ethics committee. Let's have a real hearing. They didn't want to have a real hearing. They want to rush to judgment. Why? So there can be some headline that will please Donald Trump tomorrow instead of a unanimous statement, or forgive me, I think the distinguished gentleman from Louisiana may have dissented, but an otherwise unanimous verdict of the House of Representatives that the American people want all the files open. We've had enough of the cover-up. We want all of the truth. We want the survivors and the victims to have the possibility of accountability. Well, they want to give them another headline, which is that they've arraigned a Democratic member for taking a phone call from her constituent, Jeffrey Epstein, in the middle of a hearing. And of course, I don't think there's any rule here against taking phone calls in a hearing. Now, if you want to actually give her the chance to explain what happened, then we would take it to the Ethics Committee. I still don't see what the charge is. Where is the ethical transgression? Where is the legal transgression? Are you saying anybody on your side of the aisle who had a phone call with Jeffrey Epstein should be censured? Be careful your answer there, because there's a lot more that's about to come out, right? So you should think about what is the principle behind this rush to judgment. I want to close just with this thought, because I know there were a lot of people in the chamber who were here when this happened, and a lot who weren't. There was a move to expel George Santos, who was a Republican member of the House from New York. And it was the same kind of rush to judgment, absolute political frenzy, and I looked at it for about 60 seconds. And, you know, I was a professor of constitutional law, so call me a legal nerd. But I said, wait, this guy's not been convicted of anything. Well, he's a Republican. Yeah, I know he's a Republican. He was not convicted in criminal court. To my knowledge, he had not been arraigned yet or convicted of anything in the ethics disciplinary process. They just said, well, there's bad press, we want to get rid of him. Beware of what you wish for. Is that the rule that you want here in the House of Representatives? That you can just draw up a member of Congress in 24 hours or 48 hours because there's a bad newspaper article without asking any questions, without giving that person any due process at all? Is that what it's come to at this point? I mean, all we're asking for in the Epstein files is release the materials so we can check it out. They want to go ahead and censure and remove from a committee a distinguished member of the House of Representatives with no due process at all. I reject this. I hope the whole body will reject this, just like I voted and spoke against removing George Santos, a Republican on the other side of the aisle, because he had gotten no due process. I hope all of our colleagues will reject this absurd rush to judgment and attempt to change the subject here. I reserve the balance of my time.